This is called working out the theme. So meditation is a problem of culturing your consciousness, tuning it into what you want to achieve. And when you succeed in keeping yourself to that track, what happens is, when you start, you are the knower who wants to know. Knower means experiencer also. The knowledge and the known, the object. So as you go on, you forget yourself. The knower disappears into the known. Only that knowledge, only that experience is there. The three with which you start melt in one. And when you are completely absorbed, aware of nothing else, that is called samadhi or trance. But in normal states, in normal cases, when you come out of that condition, you are not aware, conscious of what has happened. All that you carry is a memory, that you were happy, that you were peaceful, that you were absolutely alone. But your outer nature remains what it is. That is why Sri Aurobindo says that samadhi, trance, which was the goal of many of the previous yogas, doesn't help, doesn't solve your problem. Your nature remains what it is. You continue to be irritable, perhaps more irritable because of the inner things, and you become an impossible problem for everybody. So he says a waking trance, a wakeful samadhi is necessary. That is, even at that time you are conscious, and when you come out with that consciousness. That means a bridge has to be built between the outer consciousness and the inner consciousness. And bifurcation of consciousness is the way to do it. And there is an interesting passage where he describes such a condition. Here, I was speaking of that complete silence, complete blank like feeling in which you are completely lost. That's the normal state of a samadhi, trance, where you go into the older type of meditations. Now he says, a stillness absolute, incommunicable, meets the sheer self-discovery of the soul. A wall of stillness shuts it from the world. A gulf of stillness swallows up the sense and makes unreal all that the mind had known, all that the laboring senses still would weave, prolonging an imaged unreality. Self's vast spiritual silence occupies space. Only the inconceivable is left. Only the nameless, without space and time. Abolished is the burdening need of life. Thought falls from us. We cease from joy and grief. The ego is dead. We are free from being and care. We have done with birth and death and work and fate. O soul, it is too early to rejoice. Thou hast reached the boundless silence of the self. Thou hast leaped into a glad divine abyss. But where hast thou thrown self's mission and self's power? On what dead bank on the eternal's road? One was within thee who was self and world. What hast thou done for his purpose in the stars? Escape brings not the victory and the crown. Something thou camest to do from the unknown, but nothing is finished, and the world goes on, because only half God's cosmic work is done. Only the everlasting No has neared, and stared into thy eyes, and killed thy heart. But where is the lover's everlasting Yes, and immortality in the secret heart? The voice that chants to the Creator fire, the symboled Om, the great assenting word, the bridge between the rapture and the calm, the passion and the beauty of the bride, the chamber where the glorious enemies kiss, the smile that saves, the golden peak of things. This too is truth at the mystic fount of life. And then he describes that when you have this experience, that everything is really zero, nihil, nirvana, that's the truth, and not all this that is seen. Some philosophies speak of it. He says, the zero covers an immortal face. A high and black negation is not all. A huge extinction is not God's last word. Life's ultimate sense, the closing of being's course, the meaning of this great mysterious world. In absolute silence sleeps an absolute power. Awaking, it can wake the trance-bound soul, and in the ray reveal the parent sun. It can make the world a vessel of spirit's force. It can fashion in the clay God's perfect shape. To free the self is but one radiant pace. Here to fulfill himself was God's desire. This is a precaution, that we should not be in a hurry to treat every experience as the ultimate. I think at this stage we shall meditate for half an hour. Om think when we meet after lunch break, there are a few more points, like possible points of meditation or concentration, their respective advantages and where they lead, a few readings of helpful passages, and then individual questions. That's how we'll proceed. We'll meet at 2:30. Now, there are certain specific centers in the body which are intended as points of concentration and meditation. One, which we discussed at length yesterday, is the heart center. The heart center is behind the cardiac center, in the center of the chest. Attention is directed there. There is not exactly any particular point, but it is in that region, and once the attention is directed there, it gets focused. And usually the heart center is chosen when the aim is to realize either the self within, Atman, or the indweller, the divine indweller in ourselves, or our own soul. A more popular and classic center for concentration in traditional yoga is in the center of the eyebrows, a little above. I mentioned that the heart center is the center of love and unity. This eyebrow center is the center of vision and will. It is called in Sanskrit Ajna Chakra, AJNA, the command center. Most of the yoga teachers who will teach you, will tell you to focus there, and they will tell either you have an image of a flame there and go on concentrating, or have a lotus. Now this center, being the center of vision and also of the willpower, once you start pointing your consciousness there, things start happening after a time. Pretty soon you start seeing number of figures, number of visions. What happens is the physical vision is broken through, and the subtler vision opens up, and you see things which are always there but which the physical eye does not see. And it is a very fascinating game to watch this procession of figures, triangles, circles, play of colors, and so on. And this concentration at the eyebrow center is technically called Tratak, T-R-A-T-A-K. Sri Aurobindo describes it again in Savitri, which I thought will be interesting to you. Now, all vision gathered into a single ray, as when the eyes stare at an invisible point, till through the intensity of one luminous spot, an apocalypse of a world of images enters into the kingdom of the seer. This is an interesting exercise, and to many it turns out to be a detour. In this it holds your interest and you lose sight of your original purpose, because as your consciousness gathers there, you get a strange power of exerting your will on others. The willpower condenses itself, and a thought that you want to reach to somebody, it does go. You begin to see things which may happen in the future, because you exceed physical time and space, and you may get a glimpse of what is going to happen tomorrow. But here what is misleading is, in the subtler world there are all kinds of possibilities struggling to actualize themselves on physical plane, and you may see a possibility appearing before you. It may or may not succeed in actualizing, and that is how many of these prophecies, like Edgar Cayce, Nostradamus and all these, have not come true, because when they live in that realm, they see so many possibilities and they think they are going to actualize. Some succeed in actualizing, and that is where we see them coming true. The others are either cancelled or defeated, or other possibilities have taken over and they have not materialized. So this is a world of what Sri Aurobindo calls valley of the false glimmer. Fascinating, but also misleading, unless you have developed an intuitive sense of truth. Then automatically something tells you this is not going to be true, or this is not to be taken. So this is one of the points. The third is above the head. Above the crown of the head there is a center which opens the channel to planes of knowledge above the thinking mind. It acts as a channel between the mind and what is above. So if your aim is to transcend the human formula, arrive at the one spiritual existence, at the self beyond the mind. You choose to concentrate here and just keep open like this, and either a peace settles down, or you may feel an impact of a force, of a consciousness that gives you a cool feeling, or it gives you a sense of power, or in the beginning it gives you a headache. These three are normally used for meditation. But by way of completer information to you, I should mention that there are actually 7 such centers in us, and each center is a base for the operation of a particular power of consciousness. It is the center for a particular principle, and all these centers are situated in our subtle body and not in the physical body. But though they are in the subtle body, they have the corresponding areas of operation in the physical body, leading us to think that these centers are in the physical body, because we become aware of them by their action. We do not know from where the action starts, but we feel in that area, we say, yes, this is the center. Now, at the base of the spine, for instance, at the base of the spine, there is what is called the root center. I don't think you want me to give the Sanskrit names. I might write them on the board afterwards. The root center, called the Mooladhara, the basal center, and that is where the earth principle is concentrated. The earth principle is our physical body and physical desires like food, greed, things like sex, these are there. Now, when that center is active, becomes active by your concentration, or in the course of evolution it becomes active, the body is articulate, the physical dimension of our life matters much more than others. Greed and appetite for food, desire for sex, all these are vibrant. Then a little above, at the root of the genitals, there is the other center which governs our lower vital, that is petty desires, petty passions, small jealousies, small ill will, things of that sort, petty impulses. And above, this is the principle of water. First center is the principle of earth, this is the principle of water, and at the navel center there is the principle of fire. It is what governs our large impulses of life, courage, bravery, ambition, domination. That is the higher vital, as it is called, in the navel center. In the heart, what is called the heart center, also called the center of the unstruck sound. Human sound is a result of percussion of two things, but this sound always goes on by itself. It is the cosmic sound, nada, which is always there in the cosmic rhythm. That is the center of love, center of unity. The next center is at the back of the throat. And the heart center is, there is the principle of air. At the back of the throat, there is the center of expression or externalizing mind. It is the center of ether. The center above the eyebrows, middle, is center of vision and will, and there is the principle of mind. At the crown of the head is the center which governs the thinking mind. You may call it the principle of the superconscious. And when you reach there, or when you are stationed there, you are above all this, and you are in touch with the divine consciousness. You are in touch with the divine consciousness. Now these centers are also called chakras or wheels, because to the occult sight they are convolutions of neurochannels in those areas, in those points. They look like wheels, chakras. And the whole tantric system is based on opening up these centers, and all these centers hang, as it were, along the subtle spinal column, and at the bottom is what is called the Kundalini Shakti, the pranic dynamism. And when that is, there is a process and a technique. I should be dealing with it I think next Sunday at the Cultural Fellowship. When that power, right, dynamism awakes, it strikes at each of these centers, opens up their activity. Normally it is said that in an average modern man, or man means woman also, only the three lower centers are awake. The lower spine, at the bottom of the spine, bottom of the genitals, and the navel. The heart center is rarely open. That is why we lack love, we lack understanding, we lack unity. By yogic process, it is possible to activize the love center. It is possible to activize the expression center. It is possible to activize the vision center, and ultimately to arrive at the Shiva consciousness, the supreme consciousness. So nearly half of ourselves still lies untapped, undeveloped, unevolved. Yoga is a process to open and activize these areas. If we don't do yoga, nature will go on slowly, taking thousands of years for what can be done in a few years by concentrated application by human effort. And about these centers, Sri Aurobindo describes. He describes how we have centers, and how when the Kundalini wakes up, it opens all these channels, He says, our hidden centers of celestial force open like flames to a heavenly atmosphere. A flaming serpent rose released from sleep. It rose billowing its coils and stood erect, and climbing mightily, stormily on its way, it touched her centers with its flaming mouth, as if a fiery kiss had broken their sleep. They bloomed and laughed, surcharged with light and bliss. Then at the crown it joined the eternal peace. Then he speaks of this center, crown, eyebrow center, this center in her brow, where the mind's lord in his control room sits, there throned on concentration's native seat. He opens that third mysterious eye in man, the unseen's eye that looks at the unseen. There throned on concentration's native seat, this is the same thing. Then the lotus of the throat. The lotus of the throat, where speech must rise, and the expressing mind, and the heart's impulse run towards word and fact, a glad uplift and a new working came. Heart, it glided into the lotus of her heart, and woke in it the force that alters fate. In the navel lotus, broad imperial range, its proud ambitions and its master lusts. In the narrow nether center's petty parts, its childish game of daily dwarf desires. And last, in the deep place where once the serpent slept, there came a grip on matter's giant powers, for large utilities in life's little space. A firm ground was made for heaven's descending might. And regarding meditation, there are some passages. What he describes, what happens at times in meditation. A calmness neared as of the approach of God, a light of musing trance lit soil and sky, and an identity and ecstasy filled meditation's solitary heart. Then all grew tranquil in her being space. Only sometimes small thoughts arose and fell like quiet waves upon a silent sea, or ripples passing over a lonely pool, when a stray stone disturbs its dreaming rest. On meditation's mounting edge of trance, great stairs of thought climbed up to unborn heights, where time's last ridges touch eternity's skies, and nature speaks to the spirit's absolute. And we spoke of asana in the morning, and he describes intense, one-pointed, monumental, lone, patient he sat, like an incarnate hope, motionless on a pedestal of prayer. A firm spiritual poise, a constant lodging in the eternal's realms, a safety in the silence and the ray, a settlement in the immutable. I spoke of some sounds that you hear, you may hear when you start meditation, and they are described. Yes, it seemed the yearning of a lonely flute that roamed along the shores of memory and filled the eyes with tears of longing joy. You hear like the notes of a flute, though there is no actual physical flute. A cricket's rash and fiery single note. It goes on repeating itself. It marked with shrill melody night's moonless hush. Then a jingling silver laugh of anklet bells traveled the roads of a solitary heart, or from a far harmonious distance heard the tinkling pace of a long caravan. It seemed at times, or a vast forest's hymn, the solemn reminder of a temple gong. A bee croon, honey drunk in summer isles, ardent with ecstasy in a slumberous noon, or the far anthem of a pilgrim sea. These are the various types of sounds one may hear. Describing certain experiences in meditation, he says, our souls can visit in great lonely hours still regions of imperishable light, all-seeing eagle peaks of silent power and moon-flame oceans of swift fathomless bliss and calm immensities of spirit space. A breath comes down from a supernal air, a presence is born, a guiding light awakes, a stillness falls upon the instruments, fixed sometimes like a marble monument, stone calm, The body is a pedestal supporting a figure of eternal peace, or a revealing force sweeps blazing in out of some vast superior continent. Knowledge breaks through, trailing its radiant seas, and nature trembles with the power, the flame. Then the small bodily ego thins and falls, no more insisting on its separate self. It leaves us one with nature and with God. In moments when the inner lamps are lit and the life's cherished guests are left outside, our spirit sits alone and speaks to its gulfs. A wider consciousness opens then its doors, invading from spiritual silences. A ray of the timeless glory stoops a while to commune with our seized, illumined clay, and leaves its huge white stamp upon our lives. These are some of the typical passages that give graphic descriptions of yogic experiences in meditation. And now I would invite questions from everyone. If any particular areas have been left untouched or ambiguities to be cleared, I think we should utilize our time now. Now it is time for you all to talk and for me to listen. Yes.
This morning you mentioned a teacher and the importance of a teacher, and I wondered if you would talk some about the process of finding a teacher and also how to tell a true teacher from a false teacher.
That is true. It is a 100th time I have been asked this question in America. You know, it is I think a need. The authentic spiritual tradition is that the teacher comes to you when you are ready. You don't go in search of a teacher. He comes. Now, the teacher may or may not be in a human form. It may come in the form of a book, in the form of a word, in the form of a shock, in the form of a casual contact. But there is a divine providence seeing to it that exactly when you need, you get that help. God is more anxious for us than we are for Him. And we have only to keep our eyes vigilant, open and mind vigilant, and know exactly whether something is meant for us in whatever is happening. Many times we miss things, but we should be vigilant. A teacher, a real spiritual teacher, is one who does not impose himself on you in any way. He is what Sri Aurobindo describes in the synthesis: a child leading children, a light kindling other lights, a brother leading brothers, a power or a presence of God calling to him other powers. there is always a humility and a gentleness about him. And when you are in the presence of a genuine teacher, you have an unmistakable experience of peace and sweetness. When, on the other hand, you are filled with excitement, with agitation, with a sense of power, sense of greatness, you can be pretty sure it is not right. It is a vital power of the person that radiates and that fills you, and he or she acquires control over you. They suck up your inner energy, they claim your soul. But where you feel pure, a sense of purity, a sense of peace and sweetness, you can be sure you are in the presence of a genuine teacher, whether he admits it or not. A real teacher will not easily admit that he is a teacher. But the others will go on proclaiming themselves, I am God, I am the universal teacher, I am the prophet. I think this is what I could say on the question.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I may
Yeah.
comment here. Swami Parahamsa Yogananda, in his autobiography of yogi, gives a very, very good account of that, in that he was so anxious to find his teacher that from the age of 11 or 12 he travelled all over India to various famed teachers, and found in each case that that was not the right one for him, and underwent many, many very difficult experiences trying to find the teacher and never could find it, until one day he was staying at the ashram of a much recommended teacher and was quite unhappy there, and was sent down to the local store with one of the other boys at the ashram to buy groceries and bring them back. And on the way to the store, his attention was drawn to a figure standing at the top of a rise on a road that was going off to the left, and he found himself so drawn to this figure on the horizon that he couldn't follow along the road to the grocery store. It was impossible for him to proceed the way he was supposed to go. But in fact, his feet wouldn't even move from the ground. But when he turned toward the teacher, then he found himself running.
Yes.
And that proved to be the true teacher for him. Who, he said, I've been waiting for you so long. And so the obvious point of that is that you may make all sorts of efforts, but they will not necessarily bring any effect. But when the time is ready, the teacher will appear.
On Friday evening, you spoke about the different forms of meditation, a sense of concentration,
Yes.
self-awareness, and then meditation.
Yes.
And yet I've seen each of these in all that we're doing.
Yes.
Could you
Yes.
explain that a little further?
Yes, because all these enter into the discipline at some stage or other. Because even meditation, first you start with concentration. And then one of the processes, if you care to do that, of silencing the mind, is a phase of contemplation. You may not go through that stage. You may have a more difficult process of shutting out the thoughts, but some contemplation. So each is not enough by itself. They all together are to be integrated into the main part is meditation, working or a flow of consciousness or a flow of mind on a theme. Yeah.
You spoke of the Atman and the indweller and the soul.
Yes.
What are the differences between
Yes.
the
Supporting every form, there is the spirit. That is the self, Atman, of every form. And this Atman of this form, Atman of this form and this form is the same. So that is why they say Atman and Brahman are one. But with reference to you, the spirit individualized and supporting you is your Atman, yourself. It is the universal spirit individuating itself and supporting each formation. That is the self or the Atman. It is not involved in evolution. It is just supporting. And because of that, the form lives. Now, it puts forward a projection of itself in the movement of evolution of that form. And that spark, that projection, as it develops, becomes the soul. Now, there is also the divine Purusha, the divine person, situated in the heart. He does not really evolve or anything. He is the master of the being.
The master of
The being.
the being.
Being. But he is not just a witness like the self, but he is active, responding to your needs, responding to your prayers, guiding you. He is the divine creative spirit, creative intelligence situated in each home, in house and house, the immortal in the mortals. In the Gita, he describes how in each creature he is there seated in the heart, mounted on the wheel of Maya, means nature. So, the divine indweller looks after and promotes the growth of the soul Godward. And these are very subtle distinctions. Logically, I would say the divine spirit in its personal aspect is the divine indweller. The spirit in its impersonal aspect is the Atman. Am I clear?
Yes, but say it again.
The divine spirit impersonally supporting you
Yeah.
from behind
Yeah.
is the Atman or the self.
Yeah.
That spirit overseeing you, helping you, responding to you in its personal aspect is the divine indweller.
Is, from your chart on the board, and I don't remember, is Maya the Shakti aspect of Purusha?
Yes.
Yeah.
What is Prakriti or nature in ignorance reveals itself as Shakti in knowledge. And they speak of higher Maya and lower Maya. The lower Maya that obscures, it is ignorance. The higher Maya that liberates. Maya is the power of the infinite finitizing things.
In your description of the chakras, does it sometimes happen that there's a disordered development?
Yes, yes. Certain upper chakras may be active and the lower chakras may be dormant. There is at times. It is not always an orderly blossoming of the chakras.
What is the remedy?
If the imbalance is striking, one concentrates upon that, one meditates upon that, activizes it, and
The undeveloped one.
yes, and in our external life undertakes those activities, physical activities, which have an effect of activizing or expressing that center. Supposing my mind center is very dull, then I must take steps to develop my intelligence, engage myself in studies, develop my memory power and all that. By these means this center is developed. If it has already been developed in my previous birth, well, I come with that. I am born a very brilliant fellow, intelligent, and my mind is scintillating. It means I have done that homework in my last birth.
Another question. You have said what is so consistent about the erect spine in terms of
Yeah.
meditation.
Yes.
Sometimes I have such a powerful feeling of being pulled forward, and in fact, this morning I really, and I've always tried to adjust it, and it seems to me that any kind of physical adjustment interferes with the process. This morning I let it go, and it was almost as though I were going to fold up in myself, and it was across my shoulders that there was such, not the sense of being pushed down, but as though there were something supporting there. Now, should one pull himself back into the upright position?
No. You have to yield to the natural movement. You start with that erect position, but thereafter the position may undergo some changes and all that. You shouldn't artificially influence it.
Follow the position.
Follow the position. So this thing is very symbolic, because your soul must have been running further. Yes, you see, and the physical translation of it was like that, and your body was trying to follow.
What is the influence of drugs on your ability to meditate?
You see, yes.
Especially when I'm interested in just caffeine.
Yes.
That seems to be
Now drugs, what happens when you take drugs is they release you from the physical clamps, the normal physical inhibitions and physical limits of your sight, of your hearing. Our body has got certain physical limits. Now by drugs that is loosened, and so the subtler senses begin to operate. What normally takes place in some people as a result of yoga, the subtler vision, the subtler hearing, that takes place immediately by the drugs. And you have a luxuriance of experiences. You get experience of different states of consciousness, different realms of existence, all that you see and all that, and you have a euphoria, a feeling of exhilaration, because you are freed from what clamps you down. But what happens afterwards? When you come back, when that strip is over, you feel unnatural. This very physical limits becomes unbearable to you. In yoga what happens, these things get normalized. The drugs do not normalize. They give you an open your being to a certain type of experience. But if you want that experience again, you have to take again drugs. So it is an artificially stimulated experience which not only disturbs the balance but makes you unfit for the normal action and reaction phenomenon. And how does it free you from the physical clamps? It disintegrates the system that has been devised by nature to keep you balanced. It disintegrates your consciousness, and each time you take a drug, your consciousness is never the same, and the disintegration, disruption in consciousness, evolving consciousness becomes so much that you become abnormal. You need to take more and more drugs to have that feeling, and all that you have evolved is lost. You become dis-evolved afterwards. As an experiment, as Aldous Huxley and others did, the Timothy and others, Larry. Well, as an experiment, it is all right when you have full control, you see, all right. But what does it prove? It only proves that altered states of consciousness are possible. Or at the time of death, nowadays in deaths regarding, experiments regarding dying and making death easier, they give these drugs so that the whole perspective changes at the moment. It does not change permanently. So this is, I would say, an extreme form of something like a concentrated alcohol. See, there is neither sin nor virtue, nothing, but it purely its physical effect on the person. As an experiment, it is interesting, but as a way of life, it is disastrous. Am I clear? Yes.
Another one is just coffee and tea. Will that interfere with meditation?
No. You see, after all, these things, these slightly stimulate. Caffeine slightly stimulates the nerves. It doesn't release you from the physical clamps. If you are fatigued, that fatigue is quieted down. A slight stimulation. Like you go out and you feel fresh air, you feel nice about it. So, for some people smoke. To them it gives a certain relaxation. Well, these are all artificial means to stimulate or to relax. But our development of our consciousness cannot be made to depend upon these external stimuli. Yes.
Question. What is the relationship between the subtle body and the physical body? Am I asking this in a specific respect? When there's been damage to the physical body, does this have an effect on the subtle body?
No. No. There is the classic case of a man who was lame, who was lame in life. Then he dies. And there, by habit, in the subtle body, he goes on limping. Then somebody tells him, but why are you limping? You are all right. Then he says, yes. And he walks normally. There he is not lame. But the memory sticks, and he walks as if he is lame even in the subtle body. It does not. It does not.
Pandit, you gave us several techniques of meditation on the chakras and focusing on either the heart center for a certain effect or the
Yes.
brow center for another type of effect and so on. And then earlier today you gave us a way of concentrating on something like God is love or
Yes.
God is power and so
Yeah.
on, and following a chain of meditation through
Yes.
that.
Now that can be done either from here or here or here.
Oh,
You see?
that's what I was wondering.
Yes. You see, this is just a station. Which station you choose to center your consciousness, whether here or here or here, it is left to you. Normally, intellectuals, those whose mind is very developed and who are highly intellectual, they do it here. And those who are very wise, quiet, balanced and things, they may do here. Those who are likely to be emotional, those who are not much developed intellectually or what think, they do it here. But what you have to do is the same method. But where you station yourself, in the heart or here, it is left to each individual's feeling of what is natural for that person, easy. And when you find it easy, it means nature has prepared you there. In the beginning you may have to experiment and see, but the experiment can't go on eternally. First a few times you see, and then you generally, it clicks here, it clicks there, you continue that.
Will it sometimes switch partway through a meditation where you would go maybe start off at one center and then find all of a sudden switch to
Yes,
another?
it does. Then you have to follow it.
Follow it.
Yes. The yoga power or the inner nature, it shifts its base. But when you start in the same way. But then allow yourself to be led or guided.
So you pick a certain
Yes.
center that you want to focus on, and from that
Yes.
pick an idea
Yes.
and
Yes.
follow it along.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
You talked a lot in your descriptions of meditation quoting Patanjali's sutras.
Yes.
And that seems to be a source that's accepted by most of the
Yes.
Hindu meditative practices. Can you help me identify what is unique to what you talked about that's unique to Sri Aurobindo? Or
Yes.
if there is in fact any of this that is unique?
I know. It is a very intelligent question. The very second aphorism of Patanjali is yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga is the stemming of the movements of the mental stuff, or you can say the mind. You stun the movements of the mind. That is, you kill the mind. You kill the mind so that in the limpid waters of the lake of mind, the self shines. That is, you get release from nature and you reflect the self. So the whole idea is rejection of nature, dying to nature, and becoming one with what is beyond nature. Sri Aurobindo's yoga is not to kill the mind, but to change the character of the mind, purify the mind, turn the mind upward and inward, develop it into a higher mind, a divine mind, and express the self in life. His is a world affirming, life affirming technique, whereas Patanjali is a nature rejecting, life denying process.
So the goal is what you said earlier, the bifurcated mind.
Yes.
Waking to mind.
Yes, yes.
to nirvikalpa.
Exactly. You have it.
Great.
start meditating or when I start getting deeper into the meditation, is I feel a sense of a lot of times of physical motion, like I'm actually flying or
Yes, yes.
and sometimes I even get dizzy from it.
Yes,
I was
it is.
just wondering about
When
that.
you have the feeling of flying, it means that inside you have come out of your physical body, and it is the subtle body that flies. Whether in dreams or in meditation, when you fly, it is a normal activity of your subtle body. That is, in meditation, your inner being has withdrawn from the physical and is active in its subtle body. So you may have a sense of rapid motion, you may have a sense of flying. What you have to do is to watch without interfering at that time, without trying to make a judgment at that time. Just watch. Don't try to assess, because it is the interference by the mind.
The assessment is the interference of
Yes, at that time.
Yes.
You can assess afterwards.
Afterwards, but not.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shupana, I noticed in my meditation this morning that when I was focusing on the Ajna center, that I felt like I was aside my body, not really focusing like in this manner, but more like in this manner. Could you help me understand what that might symbolize?
It could be, your witness self came into operation, and it may not be exactly behind the Ajna center. You may have felt it is aside, but it is watching. The angle doesn't matter.
Okay, that's what I was.
The angle doesn't matter.
Because I kept wanting to try and.
No.
And it kept going right back, right back. And I said,
Actually,
forget it, just be there.
actually, that center of concentration must be there in the subtle body,
Mm-hmm.
because your subtle body is larger than your physical
That was
body.
the experience at the same time with the
Yes.
self, much larger.
Yes.
At the same
Yes.
time.
Yes.
One other question. A difficulty I have after coming out of meditation is how to ground myself so that I can come out and say, talk to people, drive. I mean, I find like when I get out, it's like it's as if I don't
You should not get up for a few minutes,
Okay.
even whether from sleep or from meditation. After you awake or you open your eyes, don't move. Give a few minutes for the being to come and take its position normally in the physical body, physical consciousness. If you just rush, there are likely to be accidents, some kind of hurts and disorganized movements. So a minute or two, just watch, and slowly you settle in the physical consciousness, and then you can go. But try to prolong the state of meditation in active life as long as possible. That peaceful attitude, that kindness, that aloofness, all these,
The aloofness?
At times you get aloof.
Because that's what I was feeling.
At times you feel aloof.
Yeah.
At times you feel full of identification and love. So whatever movement takes
To
possession
accept
of you, it should be allowed to run its course, Yoga is not really a system. It is a developing way of life. That is what she used to say. Yoga is practical psychology. Yes.
You mentioned Friday night you're coming to America to teach, and that you might speak about why you had done that, or what the significance of that was for you. Did I understand that?
I don't think I ever came here to teach.
Or to something about coming to America that you mentioned.
You were
Friday
spending
night.
time in the
Spending
United
time here.
States.
I'm spending time, yes, sharing whatever I know or have experienced, and also learning from many things here. And I have gone to many countries, but I have not found this type of receptivity, readiness in other countries. So that is what draws me again and again. Because what mother said, I again and again remember. She said, there are many people who are practicing my yoga without knowing it. They may not have heard of us, they may not know, but they are practicing it. And I found that true when I came to this country. Number of people, the terminologies may differ, names may vary, but they are practicing it. So everybody told me San Francisco is a city of crazy people, don't go there. You see, I know. So when I read the journals and advertisements and all that, it is crazy and bewildering, as I said. But still there is a core. There is a core of truth here, and truth seekers. Mother would approve of this, I tell you. Mother would approve of San Francisco and not Chicago. She was always a believer in experimenting, giving freedom, even if you go through all kinds of movements. She said it is necessary for them to do that. But let the movement be on, she said. Let the movement be on. Don't confine it to a system, a border this way, that way. No. So, she had a great hope from America. And I think the west coast of America is more open and ready than the east coast. Yes, that's what I feel from everything, from their literature, from people, whether it is California or Northwest, there is a stir. There is a stir.
Historically, there's been, the West Coast is on the Pacific, and there's been that cross interchange
I see.
with Asia more directly on the West Coast
Yes.
than with the East Coast.
So what is the, real truth about these what we call native Indians here? Are they really from Mongolia, who have come across Alaska in the earlier, when there was a land block?
That's what they say.
This is a generally current accepted theory.
But it's so long ago that...
Or are they Libyans, as that Gaddafi claims? But their features, what do they show? Features? Mongolian.
Of course, the Eskimos, and of course the theory is the Bering Straits was a solid mass. But then I think they discovered just recently that
Yes.
they had 4 million years ago there were a different set of characteristics
I see.
in Indians that were here.
Does it also have to do with the thing about Kon-Tiki and supposedly the idea that they could have came
That's
across
another one
in,
too.
that people could have came across.
They came across in barks and so forth from Asia to Mexico.
You mentioned Egypt too, but Egypt usually is associated with like Incas and Mayans.
The other theory is that it was a solid we were a solid land mass with Asia.
Asia, Africa and South America, they were one land mass, and that is why we find lot of Hindu customs in Peru and some other South American, Mexico and other countries. Temples, the architecture, customs of burning people and all that, many of them have same. And Raman Maharshi, of whom I spoke the other day, he was very fond of that hill, Arunachala hill, where he lived and practiced these austerities. It is considered to be geologically the oldest mountain on earth. It is called the Red Mountain. And he was saying, he was very interested in these things, that there is in the Andes, there is a mountain range which has the same characteristics as that hill in India. So at one time there was one line of mountains stretching from there to here.
I was
it sucks your electricity.
The electricity. But then I began thinking about, are there places that are sacred places on the earth? And what are these? I mean,
There are, you see, there are some sacred places where people have done spiritual effort, and those spiritual vibrations are never destroyed. They are there in the soil, in the area, and anybody who goes there and tries spiritual disciplines, that person feels it easier and helped. So even in India, we have some places which are so regarded, and people go to those places on pilgrimage, feel helped and blessed, and they come back. It is not a superstition. And all over the world there are some places where these God realized people have lived and worked and stayed. They are always holy, spiritual.
At those places, would you then want to sit on the ground?
I think even those places, I think it is not advisable, because I have seen even saints sit with the tiger skins or deer skins in their holy places.
Would you repeat something you said, perhaps it was in class? You made a distinction between the occult and the spiritual. And
Yes.
it seemed to me you did this so well. Would you repeat it?
Yes. Occult is knowledge of the processes of inner nature and the power to direct these processes. Just as physical science has acquired control over many of the physical processes and learned to harness nature powers like electricity and things of that sort, there are many dimensions of nature which are yet to be tapped, but they have already been touched and exploited by people who have specialized in that branch of knowledge. One does not need to believe in God or be spiritual for that. It is purely a scientific discipline, paraphysical you may call it, not physical but paraphysical discipline. Now spiritual is what concerns the divine, what concerns the self, what concerns the spirit. The spirit is existence of the divine consciousness. It includes the occult, just as it includes the physical, but it believes in realizing the divine knowledge, realizing the divine consciousness, and whatever powers ensue in the course of the developing consciousness, they become natural and they do not become occult powers. So spiritual power is what functions according to a spiritual law, and occult power may or may not conform to a spiritual law, and when it is guided by spiritual consciousness, it is right. But mostly these occult powers are used for self-aggrandizement, harming others, acquiring domination over others. They are used by the ego and unregenerate nature. So occult power is there like a sword. You can use it for the good of humanity, you can use it to harm humanity. In the earlier case it becomes white magic, In the latter it is black magic. I can use my knowledge of manipulation of vibrations to cure you of an illness. That is white magic, right use of occultism. I can use the same knowledge to create a disease in you. That is black magic.
Yes, I have heard it been said that anyone who is a practitioner of white magic automatically also works with black magic, that there's an automatic balance that happens. Do you find that that's true?
I don't think. For instance, Mother knew so many occult techniques and she did use it for helping humanity, for helping the allies during the wartime as against the Hitlerian side, and she used it always when she had the inner guidance, to do it, not out of her mental preferences.
Because I believe this was one of the statements of Rudolf Steiner.
No, Rudolf Steiner, some of his things are a bit confused.
Okay.
Yes.
A lot of that was in reaction to his feelings about theosophy.
Yes. Actually, I know, he was very much involved in theosophy. And why he broke? They are giving all kinds of doctrinaire explanations. Actually, he was due to be the president of the Theosophical movement in 1912 or something like that. But as usual in every institution, there was some politicking, and he was deprived of it. So they always give some specious reasons. So he separated, and then they developed their reasons why no, Jesus Christ is the only incarnation, there can't be any other. Everything has to be in the fold of Christianity, and then their own theory of education. It went on developing. But the real thing was, he was there is a personal affront. And some of his things are far-fetched.
What about theosophy itself in terms of like the hierarchical claims and the ascended, the masters working with the different...
I asked a veteran theosophist recently, a few years ago in America, whether it is really true all these Mahatmas and adepts staying there in Tibet and guiding the destinies, and he laughed and he was embarrassed, and he said, all of us don't believe in it, he said.
So it's mostly Madame Blavatsky's...
Yes. There is I think some people believe, but by and large those who have seen what has happened, they don't believe now.